Welcome to episode 2 of Beyond the Pages, a virtual conversation series with University of North Dakota alumni who've been featured in past issues of the UND Alumni magazine. Today we're looking back to the summer of 2020. We'll catch up with a recent graduate of UND's registered nurse program who's been serving in a critical care unit of a regional hospital throughout the pandemic. We'll meet an author whose recent novel was made into a major motion picture last year. But first, I am checking in with Dr. Monica Mayer. She was pictured on the cover of that issue with the words leader, healer, servant, warrior. She is a leader. She is a tribal council person for the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation in central North Dakota. She's the only woman ever elected to that position for her tribal council, and she is the only female physician to serve on a tribal council anywhere in the United States. She is a healer. She is a doctor by trade, and she received her medical degree right here at the University of North Dakota. She's a servant. As you'll hear in our conversation, Dr. Mayer truly lives to serve her community, and she is a warrior. Dr. Mayer is a veteran of the U.S. military, and she served as a medic in the Army Reserves. Truly, she has a great story, and if you haven't already read it, I highly encourage you to go back to that issue and do so. But first, let's catch up with her at her headquarters in Newtown, North Dakota. Here's a look beyond the pages of the UND Alumni magazine. So Dr. Mayer, it's great to see you again. Last time we talked, we were in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we talked, I'd like to hear from you how your medical expertise served you as a community leader over the past year, and what changes did you implement that will help serve your community into the future?
Well, first of all, good afternoon to you too. It's good to see you in person. I usually just am over the phone with you.
Agreed.
And so I just, practiced medicine for 22 years. And so when I ran for office, I'm on my second term. I ran on a campaign that there's 4 pillars of every community. And that's health, education, law, and economic development. Kind of like the 4 pillars we have in our Earth Lodge homes from our ancestral days, with health being number 1. And I have found over a course of 4.5 years that it is true that health of the nation and the people is more important than anything else, even an oil well. And that we prioritize from in utero to death, everybody's healthcare issues. My being an enrolled member of this tribe and a family physician who practiced medicine for 22 years, all in Indian country, has become invaluable in terms of creating access, more services, being the chair of the health committee for the tribal government, because the other government officials do not have any healthcare experience. And so it came in extremely handy for the COVID-19 to give us direction and where to go with this and how to prioritize, but also because, when I was the former chief medical officer for the Aberdeen area, I declared drugs and alcohol as being our number 1 healthcare issue in Indian country. And that's what I saw firsthand working in emergency rooms. But as a tribal government leader, I can take the leadership role in drugs and alcohol and what way we need to handle this pandemic that we have, along with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so technically, drugs and alcohol have ruined and taken more lives than COVID has. And so we're right in the thick of all these major critical issues. And so when COVID-19 hit and all the hospitals were full and patients couldn't go home, couldn't get into the hospital. We purchased with COVID dollars the Newtown Nursing Home. And we converted the western part of it in completely into a COVID shelter place. And that's where our emergency operations centers were also first initially set up at. So we had a centralized area for all of our sanitary masks, all of our products that we purchased for the community. And we had COVID care patients that were in recovery that needed to be there. And so we had people that we hired and brought on that did that job and took care of them. And now we haven't had anybody in there for, several months because, we really had a strong campaign for vaccination. And as you know, as a physician, vaccines work. And I, for those that didn't want to take them, my take on it was, when we were all growing up here, we all got the smallpox shot when we were younger. We got the polio, we got the measles, we got the mumps, we got the rubella, we got the flu, you get the pneumovax, you get hepatitis, and now you're going to get COVID because vaccines work. And so we had a big push through our apps and the Emergency Operations Center for all these things to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And so now that the COVID is, tapering down, it's easier for us to get as many people vaccinated than other places would be, instead of being at 50%, we're probably at, 70%. And so now that we're starting to, the fog is starting to lift and the black cloud of the pandemic, and people are starting to return to quote unquote a normal life. Our next step now is to remodel the Newtown Nursing Home and address another healthcare issue, that being drugs and alcohol. And we have peer support, we have LACs, we have CNAs, we have the door, which provides, sober resource living for addicts who are in recovery. We'll move them in there and provide maybe even some sober living units and activities for people to try to remain in a sober living environment. So we're getting the best uses we possibly can out of it. And this is a good thing. But for right now, the Emergency Operations Center is located in there right now. So as the COVID continues to taper off, we'll probably push forward with converting it into services and access for drug and alcohol prevention, treatment, and recovery.
So
and this is a good thing.
This is a good thing. Great thing. So you recently addressed the 2021 InMed graduating class as their commencement speaker. And I've heard you talk in the past about the importance of education to you, that it's the only thing that can't be taken away from you. Can you talk about the importance of education to you and your family and those around you?
Yeah, I'm very proud to say that I got my doctorate. I did my pre-med medical school and graduated with my doctorate from UND through the InMed program. And my younger sister, Holly, who was a master's in PHN from UND, public health nursing, served 32 years here on Fort Berthold in public health nursing, retired, and now is an instructor at UND nursing program. She's a graduate from there. And my youngest sister, Renee, who's now passed away, received her master's in social work and was our tribal social services director. But an education, once you have it, nobody takes it away from you ever for the rest of your life. And you can make a living on that and take care of your family. And my mother was always, love the Lord first, love your family second, and serve others. And my message to the InMed graduates was, you already have established that you can work hard for what you want. But now you need to take that to the next level and serve those who are in need and need help, that are poor, that are pitiful, because not everybody gets to be a doctor or chosen to serve like Jesus did the poor and the pitiful and take care of them. And that's what life's all about, is, you know, taking care of your family first and then helping others out. So my message to them was, what an honor it is to be educated and to serve and care for others. What a privilege and an honor it is. And I wish them the best of luck in doing everything that they possibly can. But, you know, I learned that from UND. UND helped me get my education and helped me realize the importance of that. Because when I did my interviews, I said, when I graduate, I'm going to come back home and serve. And I did. And, you know, sometimes that's hard to do. You know, you might want to pick fame and fortune over family and friends, you know, but in the end, what makes you the most happiest is taking care of others, you know? And so, and by the way, the more education you get, the more pay you get. So whatever.
You obviously have the needs of your community at top of mind, and you're always kind of looking to the future. What are your most, can you tell us what's next for you? What are your most immediate future plans?
Well, right now, I have 3.5 years left on this term of service to my community and to the tribe. And it is very obvious to me that we need a new KDU, which will be breaking ground here soon. I need assisted living for elders. I need a new community building where all the people can come and host all of our events and have services for the nation. We also have an oil, like a Jiffy Lube, we call it Quick Lube. And we're trying to develop a 24/7 gas station for services to the community. So a lot of my ideals, and one of the two biggest ones I just had meetings on today, is greenhousing and solar energy. I like oil and gas, but the future is in renewables. And I believe that will help set up this next generation. We're going to start with solar first. And then we already got our greenhousing projects up and going and running, and we'll be developing those too, which creates jobs, which creates education, which creates, you know, economic development. And so I think that for the next 3.5 years, trying to address, number one, that elders need assisted living. 2, that the young need campaigns against drugs and alcohol in prevention, treatment, and recovery. Number 3, that we have to have greenhousing to improve our diet and food. Number 4 is we have to have a new community building to service and congregate, where everybody can meet and know that they always have a place to go. And that we look at making sure that our young are going off to get educated. And we've already beefed up our law enforcement. And the economic development side of this is that the assisted living, the community building, the greenhousing, we're looking at a gas station. We've got like 8 or 9 areas of projects to develop over the next 3.5 years. I agree with my dad, a little hard work never hurt nobody. So I intend to work hard for the next 3.5 years to serve my community and provide the leadership that they need and want to make lives better for us living today and for tomorrow and in the future. So, and there's so much to do and so little time, you know.
Absolutely. That seems like a great place to end. And I really appreciate your time today, Dr. Mayer.
Oh, I really appreciate visiting with you.
Me too. I always enjoy it so much, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Oh yeah, well, you never know. If I get half of my ambitious project schedule done in 3.5 years, people might just landslide me back in again. I don't know. You never know.
One can hope.
Yeah, one can hope. So,
Well, you take care.
okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Author Larry Watson was born in Rugby, North Dakota, grew up in Bismarck, and earned 2 degrees from the University of North Dakota. He was featured in the summer 2020 issue as his latest book, The Lies of Edie Pritchard, was being released. And a movie based on one of his previous novels, Let Him Go, was soon to be released in theaters, or because of the pandemic, was released in online format in a lot of ways. I'm thrilled to have a chance to catch up with Larry Watson for Beyond the Pages. Larry, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it. Coming to us from Wisconsin. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, when we talked for the magazine article last year, the movie Let Him Go had not come out yet because it had kind of been delayed because of the pandemic.
Don't start what you can't finish.
So what was it finally like for you to see your novel brought to the movie screen and had major movie stars Kevin Costner and Diane Lane playing characters from the pages of a book that you wrote? What was that like for you?
Well, I've often said that relief is a very underrated emotion. So when I saw the movie Let Him Go and saw what a fine film it was, I felt relieved, and I felt that for a few reasons. First, and perhaps most obviously, you don't want your name associated with a movie that's not very good. But I'd also gotten to know Tom Bazooka, who wrote the screenplay, directed the movie, was one of the producers. And so I thought of him as a friend. And of course, I was rooting for my friend and really happy when the movie turned out as well as it did. Later, my wife and I got to know one of the producers along with others who were part of the production. And we were really happy for the movie and everyone involved in making it. But I should also say that by the time the movie came out, I felt removed from the story, as I often do once I finished a book. The novel was published in 2013, so I'd moved on to other projects. When I saw my name in the film's credits, it was a source of pride for sure, but it was also strange. I didn't have any proprietary feelings about the story. This was Tom Bazooka's work by that point. I had done my thing. I wrote a novel, and then he did his thing. He made a movie. And they're just very different mediums. So for the most part, when I saw the movie, I wasn't sure what had changed, and it didn't particularly matter to me. At that point, I wanted to watch a good movie, and it is. You mentioned Kevin Costner and Diane Lane. Right. They're not only stars, they're excellent actors, and I thought they were wonderful in the movie. I'd read the screenplay early on, and it was really interesting to see what their talent and skill brought to words that before had just existed on the page.
We boys? You had any dealings with them?
We're looking for our grandson, our boy's boy.
He's with a man named Donnie Weeboy. You ever heard of him?
No.
And you had told me that you had a chance to visit the set. It was filmed in Canada, even though its setting is Montana and North Dakota in the movie. In fact, the director even put you in a scene as an extra, if I remember that you talking about that. What was that experience like to see it being created in this different medium than you're used to working in?
Well, it was fascinating, and it was educational. I've always been interested in the movie making process, especially in the ways that making a movie differs from writing, how what a novelist does to create certain effects, to tell a story, to create characters, and then how a movie maker does it. But they're so different. And the scene that my wife and I appear in is a perfect illustration. 4 hours were spent filming a scene that takes place in just a couple minutes in the finished movie. And it didn't take that long to film because people were screwing up or the things weren't right. They just wanted to try different camera angles. They wanted to try different lighting, slightly different emphasis on certain things. Now, I might spend 4 hours writing a scene, but I don't employ over 100 people to make the scene. I don't need thousands of dollars worth of equipment. And the following day, we watched another scene being filmed, and both my wife and I thought it was a pretty good scene. And once again, so much went into filming it, and that scene didn't even make the final cut. When I decide to cut a scene, I press delete, and that's it.
It seems to me that just from looking through some of the Amazon reviews from the book, that the movie maybe brought some new fans to you to actually go back and read the novel that the movie was based on. Do you feel like maybe it did give you some new readers because for the first time one of your novels was turned into a movie?
Yeah, I think I did. I mean, there's no way to quantify that and to know in numbers, but every once in a while I heard from readers and moviegoers and who wanted to say something to me about whether they liked the book or the movie better.
Now, is there a chance that we'll see one of your other novels someday turned into a movie? Chances of that happening, or
I'm not sure. I've had other novels optioned. Montana 1948 has come close a few times with different producers. The people who have the rights now still have hopes for it. So we'll see. If it happens again, it's not going to be as a result of any effort on my part. I had nothing to do with bringing Let Him Go, for example, to Tom Bazooka's attention, but I'm sure happy that the book caught his eye.
Now, the other thing that was the major point of the story last summer was the publication of your latest novel, your 12th novel, The Lives of Edie Pritchard. What was that experience like when a book of yours finally goes on sale? I mean, is it nerve-wracking? Is it sort of a relief to have it out there in the world? I'm very curious about what that's like for the author.
Well, once again, it's a kind of relief, and again, I'm big on relief, but it also brings about a sort of closure, because once it's in print and out in the world, I no longer have anything to do with it. I mean, I might do promotional events, I might do a book tour, I might do some interviews, but I can't change what it is, for better or for worse. It's out there on its own. And of course, I hope that readers and reviewers like it, and I hope that the book sells. But at that point, it's out of my hands. And I've probably moved on to another project anyway.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Is there something you're working on now that you can talk about? I know when we interviewed you, you talked about you really try to write at least something every day. Are you working on something at the moment then?
I am working on something, but it's too early to know whether anything will come of it. I'm really superstitious when it comes to talking about a work in progress. I'm afraid if I say something about it, it's going to come out sounding silly or stupid. You know, it's about this ship captain who's sailing all over the world after this big whale, and that's ridiculous.
Now, you did tell us that with The Lives of Edie Pritchard, that at one point you thought the story was going to be about the two brothers, but instead, as you wrote it, you realized that she was going to be the protagonist. So I suppose there's some of that goes on throughout the process as you're kind of formulating new ideas for a novel.
It certainly works that way for me, and I like making those discoveries in the process of writing. I'm work sort of by intuition and try to follow the story wherever it wants to lead me.
Now, you told a story that it was a very interesting story about how your first novel, you sent 50 pages away while you were getting your doctoral degree, and you got a publisher and you were so excited, and then it took another 13 years for you to get a book published. So obviously perseverance is something that a writer needs. Do you have any other advice for writers out there who would love to get a novel published?
Well, my basic advice is read and write. You'll become a better writer by doing both of those things, and reading especially is pleasurable in and of itself. I think you will also learn something perhaps about literary genres and probably about literary markets as well. Classes and writing programs are certainly helpful for some, but they're not necessary for all of us. They worked well for me. I was very fortunate to be a student at UND in the late 1960s and early 70s. And I had classes and teachers that were wonderful. It was just the right moment for me. And those years were absolutely crucial to my development as a writer.
That's probably a good place to stop, talking about your time here at the University of North Dakota. Larry Watson, thank you very much for being part of Beyond the Pages today, and we look forward to see what comes next from your mind.
Oh, thanks very much, Milo.
Hello, everyone. On screen with me, you'll see Caleb Beam, who is an RN at Stanford Health in Fargo, North Dakota. Caleb, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you. So last time we talked, you were in the special care unit, the COVID-19 special care unit at Stanford, and you've switched over to your former job at the intensive care unit now, but I'll ask you for an update in a little bit. Just wanted to let our audience know it was a pleasure to speak with you, Caleb, and interview you about your frontline work throughout COVID and that experience last June. A lot has changed from then until now. So I'm hoping you can let us know what are the biggest changes that you've seen from last June till now.
Yeah, so last June, we were kind of in a lull. We kind of hit our surge of patients previous to last June in the spring, early spring. We kind of hit a lull during the summer. We kind of thought we had things, buttoned down, good to go. And then we really had a even worse surge in the fall, kind of around October, November time last year. And it kind of took us by surprise. We thought we were kind of through the worst of it, but little did we know it was going to get much worse with an increase in patients just before Thanksgiving time. So we've kind of been fluctuating since then in the number of COVID patients we've had. Luckily, since around Christmas, I haven't had to work in the special care unit. We still have the unit, but I've been able to return back to our general ICU and kind of go back to my, I'll call it normal job, day-to-day job now.
That's awesome, Caleb. And at the time, too, when we had spoken, there had been, I think, 270 COVID-19 patients who had been admitted to the special care unit. And now that number reached about 1,700, a little more than that. So a lot definitely has changed. And we thank you for everything that you've done on the inside. I know it's been incredible to watch from the outside. I think the entire world's eyes have been affixed to the healthcare facilities and healthcare workers like you. So I really loved hearing your stories too about your experience on the front lines and certain patients that you saw. We included one of those stories in our magazine, but could you share a few more that kind of gives us a snapshot of what your work was like working with patients?
Sure. So like I said before, we had kind of our initial surge in the spring, and then in the fall it got much worse. An interesting side effect of that was that we knew more about COVID in the fall. So people have been reading news articles, watching the TV, and they knew that once we put someone on a ventilator, that's kind of our last effort at that point. We can do a lot of things on a vent to help oxygenate them, et cetera. But they knew that was kind of like, once you get put on that, we know they're pretty seriously sick. So patients who were, coherent enough, they knew what was coming. And that was even scarier than before. In the fall, we were almost kind of naive. We knew it was a tough virus to treat, but, people didn't have that knowledge of what's like in ICU. Once you get put in the vent, how serious it was. So I remember multiple times a shift, we'd have to FaceTime family, and we'd have to make that tough decision of, do we want to put their loved ones on a vent? I specifically remembering helping a patient FaceTime their family, and you're standing there and they're saying their thank yous and their goodbyes because they don't know this could be the last time they talk to their family member. And it's a real humbling experience to be a part of that, what could be the last time they ever talk to their mother, father, brother, sister. It makes you very thankful for all the time that you have with your loved ones. And it really puts your whole life in perspective, and how easy it is to take things for granted. I remember sometimes we would be in a 4-hour shift. I remember we intubated 5-6 patients in a hallway, something that I had never seen. I've only been a nurse for 4 years, but even some more of the experienced nurses, we've never seen anything like that before from any kind of disease, any virus. So it was a real eye-opening and humbling experience during that fall months, because it was a real tough time to be working in the medical field.
And you had mentioned compassion fatigue, which so often happens when you're working so many hours and going through the motions really at some points too. So it's good to hear that it hits you at different times, at different points, that these are real people and have real families, and the mental health strain as well. That's one thing that we focused on in our last issue of our alumni magazine, specifically regarding mental health of healthcare professionals, healthcare workers. And so how about for you, Caleb? How was your mental health and well-being throughout this time period?
Yeah, so it was very challenging. The company I work for, they provide a lot of great resources for us to utilize. I know we had some mental health professionals that we could, do virtual meetings with, which was helpful. I personally didn't partake much of that. I'm lucky enough to have my fiance is also an ICU nurse with me, so I had her to lean on a lot. But it really hits you in random times. I remember watching a news story online before work, and they were right here in Fargo. The national news was broadcasting in Fargo saying, we were the #1 spot in the nation right now. And it really hit home like, wow, we're right in the middle of this, right in the thick of it. And it's going to be tough. But, I talked to a lot of family members during that time. They were very helpful. I remember getting home from work one night. We had just opened up an extra unit because we were surging past what our previous units could hold. And I remember saying, I don't know if I can go back to work tomorrow. It's just, there are so many sick patients. There's not enough nurses anywhere in the nation at that time to help with anyone. So I'm really relying on family and to help get through this was a big piece. Later, we kind of talked about the mental health aspect of it and how it hits you at different times. A couple months ago, we had gone past our surge in the spring here. And I remember watching a documentary on on YouTube or somewhere online. And it was about a 8-minute documentary on this COVID unit in a different state. I'm not even sure where it was at. And it's amazing how it just hits you, all the sounds, the sights. It made the hair stand up in the back of my neck. It kind of, that PTSD, it brought you right back to working in the thick of it, and how scary and just unknown, the disease still is. And especially at that time when we were really fighting it. But, talking with people, using those resources has been helpful to get through it.
Absolutely. And one aspect of the article talked about the interprofessional collaboration that you had with other nurses coming from all different units throughout Sanford. And that perhaps leads into our next question about the last quote of the article. You had mentioned there were some silver linings, even in the midst of COVID, that you had seen. And so looking back on your experience, what were some of those silver linings, Caleb? Whether they be improvements in the healthcare system or just personally?
Yeah. Oh, there were some silver linings for sure. Just to see the camaraderie between all the different units. I mean, we have people coming from the clinic side. We have people from environmental services helping us on the unit, physical therapists, occupational therapists. They were pulled from their regular duties to come help us. And just to see that kind of camaraderie, that, we all work for the main goal of helping our patients, whether you work in PT, OT, you're delivering food trays, you help clean rooms. It's all our main focus is to help the patient. And, it was more obvious at that time when we were all literally working on the same unit to help each other out. But it was really amazing to see everyone come together. And I think it really highlighted some of the, work we do on the everyday basis as a healthcare worker in general. These are sick patients when they're intubated with COVID, but really it's what we do every day. And I think, it really highlighted some of the great work that, nurses, PT, OT, physicians do every day, and the importance of essential workers, anyone from like hospitality industry to transportation, it's amazing to see almost how vulnerable we can be when it's something we can't even see, could stop the whole world, but how we overcame it at the same time.
Well, Caleb, we thank you for your service and taking care of the sickest of the sick, which is the title of the article. We appreciate you so much and look forward to watching your career. And why don't you update us too, real quick, with your future endeavor? You're taking a little bit of a shift with your profession.
Yeah, so I recently accepted a job with Sanford AirMed here in Fargo. So I'll be working as a flight nurse out of Fargo on both our rotor wing and fixed wing airplanes. So I'm excited. I did EMS before I was a nurse as an EMT in my local community. So I'm excited to kind of get back into a different role and a new challenge to help take care of our patients.
That's awesome. Well, good luck. Best wishes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being here.
And that's it for this episode of Beyond the Pages. Many thanks to our producer, the fun one, Brooke Conlin, videographer and master interviewer, Milo Smith, the always fabulous Jenn Lukens, and social media guru, Allison Kramer. I'm Alyssa Konickson, and we're already working on the next issue of the UND Alumni Magazine. It's going to be a fun one, and it'll hit your mailboxes sometime in late August, early September. See you next time.